25 states, 3 storm systems back to back, and a weather pattern the models are calling one of the most violent winter to spring flips in recent memory, and every single one of those things is happening at the same time, starting tonight. Right now as you watch this, a clipper is already dropping snow across the Dakotas. Wind chills near minus 30 degrees Fahrenheit are building across northern Minnesota, and El Niño, the ocean pattern that rewrites spring weather for the entire country, is waking up in the Pacific, whether we're ready for it or not. And here's the number I can't stop thinking about. The Storm Prediction Center posted a severe weather risk for next Wednesday that's a day 6 outlook, and the last time I personally saw them flag a threat that far out with this level of confidence. What followed was a bad outbreak. And before we even get into any of that, the European model is flagging a third major weather event for the week of March 10th, which, if it verifies, means the same 25 states get hit 3 separate times in under 2 weeks. And I want you to understand exactly what that means for where you live before this week is over. Quick thing before we start, drop your city in the comments right now. I respond personally throughout the day. And the city that gets the most requests is going to get its own dedicated breakdown in tomorrow's video. I do this every single day. No exceptions. All right, storm number 1 is already rolling and a lot of folks are sleeping on it, which is exactly how Saturday morning commutes go sideways. So let's start with what's on the ground right now. A clipper has overspread the Dakotas as we speak. North Dakota, eastern South Dakota, nosing into Minnesota, and the snow is sticking fast on ground that's already frozen solid, which means accumulation happens quicker than the radar makes it look. Minneapolis at 14 to 27 degrees Fahrenheit with wind chills that make it feel far worse. This clipper pushes into Wisconsin and Michigan by tomorrow, dropping 1 to 3 inches in most spots, with isolated 4-inch totals where the heavier lake effect bands set up. What makes this clipper sneakier than it looks on paper is the speed it moves fast. It sticks immediately on already cold pavement. And if you're in Milwaukee at 18/30ths of a degree Fahrenheit or Detroit at 19/32 of a degree Fahrenheit, those roads go slick in a hurry. On even light accumulations, don't let the low totals fool you. Buffalo, you already know the drill better than most Arctic cold. Lake effect bands always lurking off Erie and Ontario and at 19/30ths of a degree Fahrenheit. Any system through that corridor can pile up fast in those south and east corridors without much warning at all. Now here's where Storm 1 gets complicated for the Ohio Valley as this clipper rolls through Saturday into Sunday. It taps into Ohio Valley moisture on its southern flank. And that is the moment where the forecast stops being straightforward and starts being a coin flip on ice. Louisville at 32 to 45 degrees Fahrenheit, that is razor-thin margin territory. Cincinnati 30 to 41 degrees Fahrenheit. Columbus 25 to 37 degrees Fahrenheit. Indianapolis 21 to 34 degrees Fahrenheit, all sitting in the band where 2 degrees in either direction is the difference between a manageable snow and the kind of black ice mess that surprises every driver who figured the weather app said light precipitation. So they were fine. Pittsburgh is looking at 3 to 6 inches highest accumulation estimate for any major metro in this first round. And Pittsburgh folks, you know better than anyone that wet heavy snow on those hills turns every road into a problem. So get your errands done today while it's still clear. Over in the Northeast, and I know a lot of you are still digging out from the blizzard of 2026 that dropped 2 to 3 feet just last week, you're now looking at another 1 to 3 inches on top of that existing snowpack from this clipper pushing through Sunday. Boston at 25 to 37 degrees Fahrenheit is still sitting on over 3 feet of blizzard snow. And here's the thing. Nobody talks about adding any new precipitation on top of a frozen packed snowpack. Doesn't just add to the total. It creates a layer of ice on top of existing ice on every sidewalk and rooftop in the city. New York at 30 to 40 degrees Fahrenheit. Philly at 32 to 45 degrees Fahrenheit. D.C. at 36 to 46 degrees Fahrenheit. All in that Sunday rain to snow zone where the European model is showing snow showers from NYC through southern New England and into coastal Maine light. Sure, but on top of what's already sitting out there. That's Storm 1, smallest of the three. But here's what I want you to hold on to before we move on. Storm 1 is doing the setup work. It is softening the roads and layering ice on existing snowpack so that when Storms 2 and 3 arrive, the damage floor is already elevated. Storm 2 arrives Sunday into Monday, and this is the one that has meteorologists genuinely uncertain right now, not because it's going to be quiet, but because the exact track of that rain-snow line is one of the trickiest calls I've seen this season. What we're dealing with is Pacific moisture running underneath an Arctic-high building down from Canada, and that's not a clean, organized, low-pressure system. That is the kind of messy setup where the difference between 4 inches of snow and a half inch of ice is literally a few miles in either direction of where that freezing line sets up. The European model shows that rain-snow line lifting northward as the system progresses, meaning areas that start with snow could flip to sleet. Then freezing rain. Then outright rain, and I'll be honest with you, that sequence is exactly what turns a nuisance storm into a dangerous one for roads and power lines. Kansas City at 25 to 39 degrees Fahrenheit is watching Sunday night with a real snow-to-ice mix. The models have been consistent on St. Louis at 28 to 41 degrees Fahrenheit, same situation and Cincinnati. That Monday morning commute deserves a serious hard look right now, because freezing rain doesn't announce itself until it's already on the ground. Chicago at 23 to 36 degrees Fahrenheit is sitting in a potential snow band Sunday night into Monday morning, 2 to 5 inches depending on exactly where the heavier precip sets up, and that band hasn't locked in yet, which means tomorrow's model runs are going to matter a lot for anyone planning their Monday. Now hold on right there, because before I get to Storm 3, I need you to understand something about the rhythm of this whole sequence that changes how you should be thinking about your week. And it's the thing I keep coming back to every time I look at these maps. Storms 1, 2, and 3 are not separated by much time. They're stacked back to back across essentially the same areas, which means the Midwest and Ohio Valley are not looking at one event this week. They're looking at compounding impacts where each storm lands on roads and infrastructure that the previous storm already weakened. Storm 3 arrives Tuesday, March 3rd. Biggest ice risk of the entire sequence for the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast Great Lakes, picking up moderate to heavy snow, while that rain-snow line parks itself right over Pennsylvania, New York, and southern New England. D.C., Baltimore. Philadelphia keep Tuesday circled in red. European model has been consistent about a wintry mix to ice scenario for the I-95 corridor. And on top of all that existing blizzard snowpack, a quarter inch of ice would be a genuinely serious situation for power lines and tree limbs. Albany, Syracuse, Rochester, the Great Lakes snow machine does not take days off through this sequence. And whatever the systems don't deliver directly, the lake effect bands fill in expectations on road conditions improving through early next week should be very modest. Boston and southern New England, the Tuesday system starts as snow. Then the warm air lifts that rain-snow line northward and flips you to ice or rain before it's done. But not before adding accumulation to a region that, frankly, does not have room for any more right now. All right, hard stop, because here's where this forecast takes a turn that most weather videos aren't going to tell you about. And it's the part I want you to stay for. Because if you live anywhere in the South or the Plains, what I'm about to describe affects your next 3 months, not just your next 3 days. I've been tracking weather patterns for a long time, and what's building on the backside of these 3 storm systems starting around March 5th is not just a warm-up. It is the kind of atmospheric reorganization that rewrites the weather playbook for the entire eastern half of this country. Both the European and the GFS models agree on this, and when 2 models that fight each other constantly suddenly land in the same spot this far out, that is a signal I take very seriously. Warmer than normal conditions lock in across the eastern U.S. after March 5th. Probably 5 to 7 days straight, possibly longer. But here's what changes this from a finally warm weather story to a brace yourself story that warmth doesn't roll in quietly. It crashes the door open with a dramatic jet stream flip. Gulf moisture surging north, and enough atmospheric energy to fuel the kind of severe weather outbreak the SPC is already posting maps for 6 days in advance. And now here's the number that ties all of this together, the number I mentioned at the top that I haven't fully explained yet, and once you see it, the whole pattern clicks into place. All winter long, a polar jet stream has been running like a cold air conveyor belt straight out of Canada. That is what gave the Midwest and Northeast this brutal February. That is what spun up the bomb cyclone blizzard last week that dropped 2 to 3 feet on the Northeast in 24 hours. But right now, that polar jet is weakening and lifting north, and the subtropical jet, the one that's a moisture superhighway from the Gulf of Mexico and the Eastern Pacific, is picking up the slack, and when those two systems swap control of the weather pattern, the atmosphere does not do it gently. That collision cold air from the polar jet still hanging around in the north. Warm Gulf moisture surging up from the south is the exact setup that produces severe thunderstorms, large hail, damaging winds, and tornado development across the southern plains. And it is showing up clearly on both the European and American models right now. Storm Prediction Center has already highlighted North Texas and southeastern Oklahoma for a slight risk of severe weather on Day 6 next Wednesday, March 4th, and the Dallas-Fort Worth metro is sitting right inside that highlighted area. Dallas is at 55 over 72 degrees Fahrenheit right now, warm, sunny. Not a storm cloud in sight, but by Wednesday of next week, that same city could be watching tornado warnings on their phone. And that is a 180-degree flip in 7 days flat. And that kind of flip is exactly what trips people up. Oklahoma City at 50 over 64 degrees Fahrenheit. Tulsa at 48 over 63 degrees Fahrenheit. Y'all know better than anyone that severe weather season down in tornado country doesn't send you a formal invitation. And this year it looks like it's showing up a few weeks early and not in a good mood. And it's not just tornadoes and hail. The rainfall totals projected for the first 10 days of March across the Mississippi and Ohio valleys are the kind of numbers that make hydrologists nervous. 6 to 12 inches across Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, Arkansas, Oklahoma, and North Texas, and those are the conservative estimates. A marginal risk for excessive rainfall is already posted. Ozarks of Missouri, downstate Illinois and Indiana, Ohio, northern Kentucky, even West Virginia, and when you put 6 to 12 inches of rain on top of ground that's still frozen solid from this winter, water has nowhere to go. And flooding develops fast. Memphis at 43 over 57 degrees Fahrenheit. Nashville at 37 over 50 degrees Fahrenheit. Birmingham at 43 over 59 degrees Fahrenheit. Atlanta at 45 over 59 degrees Fahrenheit. Every single one of you makes that late winter to active severe weather flip by the middle of next week. And I want you thinking about your plan now, not Tuesday night when it's already raining sideways. Now here's the piece that I think is getting almost zero attention right now. And it might actually be the most dangerous story in this entire forecast. And it's not about the storms themselves. It's about what happens after the storms, when all that cold air finally lets go. Think about what's sitting on the ground right now. Boston on over 3 feet of blizzard snow. Providence on record accumulation. New York and Philadelphia still buried, and then picture what happens when temperatures run 10 to 20 degrees above normal for 5 to 7 straight days, on top of all that snowpack. If you've got a basement near a stream, a low-lying yard, or you live anywhere near a river in New England or the Mid-Atlantic, now is the time to start moving things to higher ground. Because when that meltwater comes, it comes fast, and there's an enormous amount of it sitting up there. Wading rivers will rise, storm drains will back up, and it will happen quicker than people expect. All right, I promised you El Niño at the top, and here's why it matters for your actual everyday life, not just weather, but your heating bill, your garden, your flooding risk. And whether this summer is going to be brutal or manageable, and the answer is different depending on where you live. Here's the plain language version, La Niña. The pattern that's been sending cold Arctic air blasting down from Canada all winter and driving this brutal February is dying, and dying fast. And the ocean conditions replacing it are going to change everything about how weather moves across this country from now through summer. The index has dropped to around minus 0.6, which is basically neutral. And warm water is building near South America and spreading west. That is the early fingerprint of El Niño. And the models have it fully developing by summer 2026, which means the pattern that produced these blizzards is being replaced by something very different. The closest match to what we're transitioning into right now is 2023, and 2023 is a year worth paying attention to, because March 2023 brought volatile storm tracks through the center of the country. April 2023 brought significant, severe weather from the plains through the Mississippi Valley, and May 2023 brought late cold shots with real frost risks sound familiar. For everyone in the northern tier Pacific Northwest, upper Midwest, Great Lakes, New England El Niño is actually going to be a relief. The polar jet weakens, the Arctic blasts become less frequent, and spring comes in warmer than normal, and after the February, you folks just survived. That is genuinely the best news I can give you today. But for the South and Gulf Coast Florida, Texas, Arkansas, all of which are in severe to extreme drought. Right now, El Niño is the drought buster you have been waiting for, driving storm after storm across the southern tier and bringing the kind of soaking rainfall that those areas have not seen in months. And it looks like the timing is finally starting to line up. One flag for the Midwest and Northeast gardeners and farmers watching this: the 2023 playbook shows cold shots still coming into the eastern U.S. well into May, which means a late frost or hard freeze is absolutely on the table. So do not rush those seedlings outside just because we're getting a warm week. All right, quick specific run.